Hello, welcome to Illumio Talks. I am Roland, the product consultant at Illumio, and I'm sitting here with Katalin from Memo. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks Roland for having me here. I'm Katalin Quadra from Memo ICT. I'm a lead developer on the Illumio team and I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. We will be talking about some technical bits, general use cases, and whatever comes our way. The first thing that we would like to discuss, I believe, was some tips and tricks. And you, within your work with Memo ICT, have a couple of tips and tricks that you encountered that you would like to share with our other users.
Yeah, indeed we have. So starting first, we always recommend all developers when using Illumio to go and do the YouTube course, go to the forum. All of the cases that we usually cover are there, examples and case studies, everything that you need. You can download from there and you can also see Roland's answers there.
So you encounter customers that are actually in search of some extra information that they couldn't find before. Your trick is to go to the forum, to the topmost pinned topics, maybe the where do I start, and then continue from there?
Yeah, that's the best. Let them handle that part. Know Illumio because they are gonna use it for themselves. Just give them a nudge to actually see how their logic is, and if that's, let's say, a bit hard for them, yeah, show them how the configuration is done, help them, and explain at the same time how everything should happen.
So if a customer comes to you and they are having a difficult time, you showed them the tips and tricks, but they are still unable to resolve it. What do you do at that moment?
Let's say we can delve together with them in that specific example, take the payload, run it through the transformer. Hey, what are you trying to achieve? Can you show me how the payload should look on your side so we can actually compare it with how it gets into the environment and do the mapping, maybe filter some keys, change some data around, introduce some new variables, and at the end, hey, this is how you started and this is how it got in.
Sounds very good. And how about performance issues? Do you encounter customers with unoptimized integrations, for example?
So at the performance issues, yeah, when, let's say, giving a good example for that, let's say you're trying to do a price import from, let's say, an ERP into an e-commerce shop. Normally, what we recommend is doing this by bulk. It's not a lot of data. You're going to have a SKU, you're going to have a price, maybe a minimum price, a maximum price, things like those. So we recommend them also doing this in bulk inserts, not the full payload. Maybe it's not supported, but Illumio has the capabilities to actually split it by bulks, and you can do it like in bulks of 50 or 100. The lower bulks, the better. If it's still around 10, 20 tasks, it's still good to debug. If you have an issue, maybe a price or a SKU is missing and that bulk can't go in, but at least not the full payload won't go in.
So whenever you are using a bulk transfer, it's mainly an issue if the receiving system supports it or doesn't support it. That's something that you will always have. But if you are using a bulk export, what are the benefits, but also what are the problems that you might encounter, for example, with debugging or if a field goes wrong in one item?
Depends a lot also on the other system, but the benefits are the amount of calls you're gonna make, because you could actually do an update on each product order by itself, and let's say you're gonna have 50 less calls. Hey, the other system is gonna take more load on their side, and Illumio is gonna also take less load on its side. So,
yes. So really cutting down on the amount of tasks being used.
Yeah, and on the debug side, like let's say Channel Engine, if in Channel Engine you're doing an import and one SKU is bad, it's gonna ignore that SKU and afterwards start with the others. So it's just gonna send a response back, hey, this SKU couldn't update. Okay, the next 49 will update.
And if you're developing and you're trying to do bulk updates, would you recommend trying the full bulk update, like 200 item bulk, or would you just start off with 3 items and then develop from there on?
Oh yeah, like you said, it's better to develop from those. Best to do it incrementally. Start with a few cases, 1, 5, 10, and after that do it upwards by 10, 100, 1,000 until you feel safe. You covered all the cases and all the payload is in with no errors coming back, and hey, it's a success.
Happy days.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's enough for the bulk updates. Are there any other optimizations that you frequently encounter or that are possible?
Most of the times, let's say your new customer coming in, getting to fetch data into Illumio, it's great to do JSON decode and just place in the pagination there how the data is gonna get in. It's automatically gonna do a get branches, so you only need to set an entity schema up, and it's gonna split the collection of data or array if you have one for products. Gonna split it up nice and fine and do the pagination more efficiently.
And that's an interesting thing. So entity schemas, that's not something that's broadly discussed, not on the forum yet either. And what do you think are key benefits of entity schemas?
So the key benefit of it, of course, is to actually keep the payload in check with the current version you're using. So let's say the API is gonna get an update and the schema is gonna change, the format of data is gonna change. You need specific requirements in that data. That's the key benefit that's not actually being used a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So validation using an entity schema is really useful, but not used a lot. And the second one, of course, using it as an identifier to later check through the tasks, what's being created, filtering through them. Maybe you want on a customer the customer number, or you also need the email, the customer name, a combination of
Exactly. So
things.
those entity IDs are very often used with the entity schema functionality. Also in the default demo that's provided with a new environment, you can see that the products, so computer components, are in there, and it's also being used in storages. If you would like to gather something from storage, you would need the actual entity name or entity ID, as I believe it's called.
Yeah.
Maybe that's also another subject to touch upon, the storages. Do you very often use the storages within Illumio?
So we use storages for multiple purposes. One is to keep mapping data between platforms. Let's say country codes. You have a specific ID in Shopware, you have a specific ID for that country, and in other environments like an ERP, you have an ISO 2 code. Let's say NL, and in Shopware you're gonna have a lot of random digits. They're an UUID generated.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually need to keep that stored, so you won't always make calls back and forth. So it's really useful to use storages just to keep in check less calls. Check first in the storage if you have that value. Let's say for our country, if you don't, fetch it back, write it in the storage, and the next time you're gonna go through that let's say another customer, another order again, hey, it's in the storage. I don't need to make an extra call. It's optimized. It's inside the environment already. So it's going to be more useful and optimal.
That will definitely save a lot of time during
Saves quite a lot.
during the calls between systems. And you primarily discussed lookup tables just now. So creating lookup tables for IDs and countries, maybe IDs and products, SKUs, or whatever not. How about saving certain data, maybe customer data or product data, and then filtering on that? Is that something that you often use?
Yeah, so for updating purposes, since not all the data or it's not capable of filtering directly from the query when doing the incoming, you want to create a storage when fetching the data in the environment, comparing it with the already identifier you mentioned, created by the entity schema. And if it's the same data, either by a specific field or the whole payload or only by the identifier, you can actually filter it and less tasks are created it's going to be more optimal in that way. Yeah.
And do you also see performance benefits not only in the response times to and from Illumio, but also in the memory and CPU consumption perhaps, when you use storages against, for example, an HTTP transformer, which could do the same, but is less optimal?
Yeah, so like you said, it's gonna take more server time to do more calls like that, and CPU usage and memory usage, because you actually need to store that information when doing the specific call in the logs. So it helps a lot. Placing it in the storage beforehand and afterwards reusing it from there. Or if you only need to reuse it for, let's say, limited time, pruning is a nice functionality that Illumio allows.
Pruning the storages themselves.
Yeah. Let's say for a specific customer, we're gonna update the data, or for pricing, we wanna update the pricing at every 7 days directly from the source, and we want it from scratch, or for availability of stock. Same thing, you can compare it with the existing stock in Illumio, and if it changes, hey, do an update outside. If it doesn't change, keep it like it is, don't create the task, and just push what it is.
Seems very basic, but also very important for optimizing your integrations. And of course, there should be a way of checking when do I reach the limits of my platform. Am I running into CPU consumption, memory consumption issues? Would you ever look at the server statistics page?
You look at the server statistics page rarely, because it's more optimized now. So Illumio implemented like priority-wise in the scheduling, so we don't have like 10 routes running at the same time, so it's less needed. But when we try to run like a manual test in the transformer, sometimes the environment, maybe it's a bit laggy, and we look there, maybe there are also other tasks running at the same time, and we can look, okay, why is my system load at 7, 8, 10? And we need to optimize on some flows there. Maybe a lot of calls are being made between one system. That usually happens when doing a node transformer, and you forget something there, maybe 700 data arrays. So it can happen.
It can happen. And you very shortly talked about something interesting, which was prioritizing. And I also know that we just now, 2 or 3 weeks ago maybe, released a feature with parallel processing within the routes, I believe.
Yeah, you did.
I haven't used it myself, but maybe you have. Is there anything you could say about it?
So we did use it a bit. It's quite efficient, but we're still testing with it. So it works great on processes that write entities that are separate from themselves. So they are not dependent on each other. Like stock and price works very great. We don't use it on more sensitive data like customer updating that also has other relationships like addresses, customer groups, and
what's the reason for not using it on those sorts of data?
So let's say you're gonna update a specific customer in a specific group. Maybe the group is not created yet. So you want to create the group. You're doing parallel on that side, you could actually duplicate the group twice. So it's best to do it one by one, that actually doing it in parallel. So it's great to use when inserting or writing data into one entity without relationships, but we don't recommend it, and it actually said there, they don't recommend it when writing data on other specific entities that have relationships, create the same entity twice.
That's a very solid piece of advice. Also, again, very logical, but you just need to remember it, of course. Are there any other 101 or maybe things that you think everyone should know, but maybe just don't get in their head? Like anything that is so basic yet hard to find when you begin using Illumio?
So let's say, like you're a basic beginner, creating everything from scratch should work with some conventions. Like we're all developers here trying to create an integration for a specific customer or for our own company. If you have a naming convention rightly set there, it can help you a lot on the right way. Let's say I'm having a bug and I ask Illumio to delve into it. Hey, I have a bug into this integration, but my integration likes Shopware products, but I don't know from where it's going to where. It's better to having a naming convention like System B to System A or System A to System B. What functionality does it have? What type of entity comes from one system to another? Is it doing an update? Is it only doing creation? So, like, maybe it's not really something talked about, but naming conventions should be a main point when creating something from scratch. It's the first thing you do when creating a router or a transformer.
Definitely,
Yeah.
just like when you're programming, you would need
Yeah.
to have a naming convention. That's no different when you're creating your integrations within Illumio. Currently, Illumio is a bit limited in terms of naming conventions and searching. I believe during Q2 there will be a label addition, label functionality that you can create separate labels and then give them to either incomings, outgoings, or routes. Would you feel like that's a really useful addition?
It could be really useful because currently we're using incomings, let's say in more connections. I'm gonna get my products from one system but send it to 3 systems. Maybe I want an incoming that's linked to those 3 systems and I want a tag on it. Hey, on what does this incoming actually get sent to, and know more about it. Hey, it's gonna be like a pop-up. I'm gonna have more information on the screen.
So now you can create multiple tags, one for the company for which the integration is for, maybe another one for the type of data, then one for the receiving system, the system that gets it. Maybe you have a separate task for, or label I mean, for entity transformers that have been mutated to cater to specific needs. That really cuts down on the naming convention mass that you currently could have, of course.
Yeah, it's gonna help a lot. We're waiting for it. Bring it on.
Will be very soon. Anything else that you suggest people do when creating their integrations?
Like we just talked, going to the forum, to the pinned most comments, starting from there, and if you have more issues, pending to the community. The community is very open. We write a lot on it, answer questions, export, template, transformers. Yeah, just ask your question on the community if you have issues, and it's going to be solved very quick.
Well, it's good to have someone else saying it besides me. I do indeed see Memo, ICT, and yourself specifically being quite active on the forum, and I do thank you for it. I really hope more people will be using the forum actively, rather sooner than later.
Yeah.
And no, that's really a good thing. I think this concludes our Illumio talks. I really would like to thank you for being here, talking to me a bit more in-depth and technical, but also with some great advice. So Katalin, thank you very much.
Thank you, Roland, for bringing me here.
And thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you will be here for our next episode of Illumio Talks as well.